In this tutorial, we'll be looking in more detail at the contact center model launched with the latest Witness Horizon release. There are many aspects of this model that are interesting. Here we'll look at the building used in 2D and 3D and the extrusion of simple furniture shapes, and we'll also cover the model logic for call taking by the different teams. Let's begin with the building. And here it is helpful to show how the building was created. So let's return to the startup model in Witness and look at the new buildings pack in the designer element window. Here we use Office to Open element and we drag the icon into the modeling window and drop it. Now if we just build the 3D view of that office building, we can see that we have a blank office building in which to build our model. But this may or may not be the right size and shape for what we want. So what we are able to do in Witness is we're able, by holding the Control key down and using the left mouse button, to make this building as tall, thin, narrow as we wish. The second thing we can do is we can right click on the icon and update the graphic. Then we can go to the 3D settings, and in here we can change the scale of the height to suit the size of building that we've drawn. So we turn off the auto scale and we override the height, maybe with a height say of 3 meters. We OK that, we update the graphic, and now when we use the 3D button we end up with an arrangement that has a height of 3 meters, irrespective of how big the other dimensions are. Now the limitations of this approach can be seen in the fact that the door on the far side here has really become very wide. Now that may be okay. If the doors do get too wide, then you either need to use different buildings or you need to use extrusions, which can really be configured much more easily to be the shape, size and feel that you want. But that has to be done in stages, building walls, building windows and building doors. Returning to the contact center model, we can see the settings in the 3D window for the building that we've used in the contact center model. And here we have a height of 3.3 meters. And that's the override that we applied in this model. Now, another thing I like to do with a building is that you don't really want to be clicking on it when you want to click on other objects. So what I would tend to do is to reassign it to a different layer. And that can be done from this selector up here, just by selecting the correct layer that you wish to place the building on. And then in the layers dialog, we can see that we have each of the layers used listed here. And what I often do is to make the building not selectable on that backdrop. And that means then that I can't get to that building anymore, but we can get at the other objects on top of that building very easily without interference from the building object. Now the next thing we'll move on to is the incidental furniture that's been arranged around the building. In a later tutorial we'll cover the chairs and the people and the cubicles, but these rectangles here at the top of the model that I'm highlighting, they are extruded to create benches or cupboards. And also the lines that I'm showing now are extruded to make partitions from simple line drawings. These objects can be drawn against any object that you wish simply by using a new display item of a line or a rectangle against that particular object, or they can be drawn on the backdrop element of a Witness. These particular shapes have all been drawn against the backdrop element, and they've been put on different layers. So here in the layer selector above, we can see that these blocks are on the furniture layer and the partitions are on a partitions layer. Now, how are those treated? Well, if we look at the layers dialog again, we can see that we have the partitions and the furniture layers here as layers 2 and 3. And each of these is extruded to a certain width of the outline, and then the height of the extrusion, and then an extrusion material. So let's take, for example, the furniture here. We see will be extruded to a height of 1 meter, and they will be drawn with a dark grey material. So how does that come through then into the 3D? Well, if we build the 3D view again, we can see that the furniture is in this dark grey material. Here we see the partitions, which have been extruded to a height just greater than the meter, just slightly higher than the cupboards. And the width of the line will be reflected in the width shown in the layers dialog. So if we go back to the layers dialog, we can see that the width of the line of the partitions is 0.05 large. If we change that to be, say, 0.25, the partitions will get much fatter and probably not be correct in many ways. And we see, actually, that doesn't look too bad, but you may want partitions of that width, but it's probably more normal to have partitions that are not quite that wide. It's another option for drawing a block of furniture. So you don't have to use a filled-in rectangle. An empty rectangle, by the way, will extrude a hollow shape, whereas the line and the filled-in rectangle will both create the filled-in shape as seen here. Let's look at the logic of this model. Look more at the 3D aspects of the cubicles and people in a later tutorial, and also the cues and the timings that are placed on the walls. But here let's have a look at the model logic. The call teams are in 3 separate modules, Team 1, Team 2 and Team 3. Each of these modules has the same structure, and the element which actually models the call handling, there are many possible kind of machine elements in here that could do that processing, but it is the actual team element here that will actually handle the calls. Calls arrive into the model. If we look at the detail here, it's an active with profile option, and we have a call arrival profile for each team. This is set into half-hourly chunks through the day, where different numbers of calls are randomly assigned within those half-hour periods. Calls arrive and are placed in the queue in the module. And from there, the team, if we look at the team logic here, the team will select calls from that queue as long as n, which is the index number of the team element, is less than the current number on shift. So in this model, we're simply assuming that the people on shift will actually occupy first X positions out of n in the team array. So those people will pull from that queue, and then at the end of the call, they push to ship. Team 3 is a little bit different in that the team element again has the same rule for selecting a call, but then the output rule is a percent rule, after which 2% of the calls, hard-coded here, is pushed to the queue for the managers to deal with. So in other words, the calls are referred to the managers. And in this model, we have 2 managers. We have a queue for managers, and then we have a manager machine. And these managers are not modelled on different shifts. We just assume these are always available. If a resource is always available, then always model it in the way by not adding shift patterns in, because it would be an unnecessary thing to do. They pull from the queue manager queue, and then when they finish the call, it's output to ship. So the model's a very simple structure. You can see there are timings for the different events. Here we have a uniform distribution between 5 and 10 minutes for the managers to deal with the calls. If we go back to the team 1 and have a look at the time for team 1 to handle a call, it's anywhere between 5 and 25 minutes on a uniform distribution. The shifts are set starting with initialize actions, and the bit which is going to set the shifts is these schedules here for the 3 teams. Each team will update its own shift, and the first timing is a very, very small number, just 0.0001 of a minute. So that event, that function, update shift, in any of the team modules, if we just look at the update shift event and look in the actions there, this is reading the hourly staff number from the profile distributions. We looked at the profile distributions in the general video on this module, so we won't look at that again, but it reads a number from that staffing profile, and then it runs through each of the people, changing the 3D shapes and icons, and changes, obviously the important thing here is that the num on shift then is set to be correct for the n value that's used when you're selecting into the team for the call. And then the next shift change is scheduled with this same function being run again in another 60 minutes. The update shift is the name of the event that will be assigned in the event list. So that's the logic, very simple logic, just straight handling of a calls arriving by a profile by the team, and then team 3 sometimes passes those on to the managers, and that would be something interesting to look at. Is 2% of calls going to create any delays in passing things through to managers? So more on 3D in later tutorials, but that's it for now. Thank you.